In this tutorial, we'll take a look at transitions. We will start with a definition of transitions. We'll look at the usage of transitions and the different kinds of transitions that exist. And we'll take a look at some examples just so you feel a little bit more comfortable with how to use them in your own writing. So let's start with that definition. Transitions basically are a word, phrase, or sentence that moves the reader from one topic to the next. And transitions often show the relationship between these topics. So what does that mean? Well, I like to think of it this way. If you think of the word transportation, right, moving things, transition has that same root. So what transitions need to do is they need to move the reader from one place to the next, one sentence to the next, or one paragraph to the next, much in the same way as a vehicle moves someone from a location to the next location. And more often than not, these transitions tell us something about how these two topics are related. Now, there are three main occasions when you would use transitions. There are the transitions within paragraphs and transitions in between paragraphs. Now, these tend to be a little shorter. They can be one word or a phrase. Or we can have transitions between big topics, say like major components of an essay or a longer piece of writing. And while those transitions can be phrases, they tend to be a little longer just because of the amount of information we're dealing with. So let's take a look at a couple of the more common examples of transitions that you'll use, say, within a paragraph and between sentences. The most common are conjunctive adverbs. So if you've ever been told that your writing is somewhat choppy or mechanical and doesn't flow, it's probably because you're missing conjunctive adverbs or perhaps transitional phrases, and we'll take a look at those in a second. Some common examples of conjunctive adverbs are finally, nevertheless, therefore, similarly, additionally, nothing you haven't seen before, right? But these words do two important things. First of all, they show the relationship between two ideas, right? They tell me how the sentence that precedes and the sentence that follows are related. And they also, and this is essential, are found between those two ideas. So conjunctive adverbs always need to sit between those two sentences that they are showing the relationship between. And the way they do that is they start that second sentence. So you'll see something like finally, comma, in the rest of the sentence, or nevertheless, comma, in the rest of the sentence. Now, transitional phrases work in exactly the same way. The only difference is that they are phrases, groups of words, instead of single words. So, in addition, comma, for example, comma, in contrast. Again, words and phrases you probably have used before. You can see how in addition is so closely related to additionally. And in fact, in terms of meaning and usage, they're interchangeable. They both occur at the beginning of a sentence, and they'll be followed by a comma. So let's take a look at an example that might use or might require a conjunctive adverb, just so you can see how they would be used. So let's imagine I'm writing about Macbeth, everyone's favorite Shakespearean play. Macbeth was manipulated by not only his wife, but also powerful supernatural figures who treated Macbeth like a plaything. He was doomed from the moment he spoke to the witches upon the heath. So these two sentences, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They flow reasonably well in the sense that I can tell these two ideas are connected. But if I wanted to create a stronger relationship between these two, I could use a conjunctive adverb right here to show, to give you a better understanding of this relationship. Now I'm going to choose a phrase, a transitional phrase in this case. So I'm going to write something as simple as, in fact, to add emphasis to this idea. And you notice that it doesn't really change the meaning, but it heightens the meaning perhaps of the second sentence and shows me the relationship between that sentence and the sentence that came before it. All right, so let's take a look at other ways that transitions can impact our writing. One of the most common forms of transitions, but also the hardest to identify, are what are called implied transitions. Now, implied transitions, they don't rely on the conjunctive adverb, they don't rely on a specific transitional phrase, but what they do is they create movement and against that transition, that movement between sentences, by choosing words that reinforce the connection between two ideas. So I'm going to leave this explanation up here as we take a look at an example or two. So let's imagine that I'm writing about history, and my topic is the Intolerable Acts, which were a series of laws passed in England aimed at the American colonies in the 1770s, before the start of the American War of Independence, or the American Revolution. So let's imagine my first sentence is, the Intolerable Acts were a series of laws passed by the British government in the 1770s. Now, I have two sentences here that I've written that could follow that sentence. They both make sense. And I just want you to pay attention to how the implied transitions connect these ideas. So if we take a look at the first one, these laws severely limited Massachusetts self-government and contributed to the start of the American War of Independence. Well, my implied transition is actually this little word right here, actually this little phrase, these laws. Because what this phrase does is it connects this sentence with the sentence before, right? Simply by using these, I'm clearly referring to the laws that came before. And see how it unifies those two sentences and kind of brings them together. Now, I've decided to do something very similar here, right? So I'm relying on the second example, that same phrase of these laws, but you can see how I've actually added a phrase before it, right? Which defines those laws even further. But because I still have this phrase here, these laws, the connection between that last sentence is still strong. So if we read it again, the Intolerable Acts were a series of laws passed by the British government in the 1770s. Designed to curb rebellion and exert British control, these laws actually contributed to the start of the American War of Independence. So you see how that little implied transition unifies these sentences and gives me a sense of movement between the two. So there's a quick overview of how transitions work. Now, if you're finding this somewhat new, or you're unsure of how to proceed or how to add these to your own writing, the best thing I can advise you is to take a look online to see what kind of sources you can find. I guarantee you that if you search for a term like conjunctive adverbs, you will find numerous websites that give you a list of possibilities. And if you keep that list around you when you're writing your essay and you're in the final moments of polishing it up, I'm sure you'll be able to find ways to add effective transitions into your work.